In this school, the teachers are just punching bags for the gangs, but they just made a fatal mistake. They touched the only person Gaiman respects. To the bullies, he's just a four-eyed nerd with zero friends. They thought he'd be an easy target until his foot met their leader's face at 100 miles per hour. Gaiman is a martial arts prodigy, a one-man army who spent thousands of hours training his body into the most dangerous weapon in the city. He's not here to rule, he's just trying to survive school. But even a one-man army has to start somewhere. 2 years ago, 15-year-old Gaiman wasn't shattering jaws. He was getting shattered by his final exams. He desperately wants to be a top-tier scholar. But let's be real, his IQ is currently competing with room temperature. With his academic future basically dead on arrival, his mom pulls a Hail Mary and hires a private tutor, Sarah. Now, look at her. She's 23, she's beautiful, and in any other series, this would be the part where Gaiman learns about anatomy instead of algebra. But sorry to ruin your research, Sarah's actually a psycho for education. She treats Gaiman's brain like a piece of raw meat, tenderizing it with logic and forcing him to shout affirmations like he's trying to sell essential oils to a pyramid scheme. 2 years of this mental trauma later, and Gaiman's grades have finally ascended from legally brain-dead to human enough to not be an embarrassment. The only problem? His intelligence seems to have a selective filter. He's great at absorbing information, but his brain is basically a high-end gaming PC that he's only using to play Minesweeper. But while his academic life is crawling forward, his social environment is a dumpster fire. Gaiman ends up at Yusong Technical High, a school so legendary for its crime rate that it's basically a vocational training center for future prison inmates. The strategy here is actually kind of genius, in a twisted way. Gaiman figures that if he's the only person in the entire school who actually opens a book, he'll rank #1 by default and cruise into a top-tier university. It's a solid plan, provided he doesn't get his skull caved in before graduation. He tries his best to stay invisible, hiding his absolute mastery of martial arts because he genuinely just wants to study. He watches his classmates tear each other apart like wild animals, keeping his head down and his Bruce Lee books hidden. But the universe has a sick sense of humor. One day, the school announces a new homeroom teacher, and who walks in? Sarah. Gaiman is absolutely floored. Seeing his old tutor in this den of lions is like seeing a golden retriever walk into a shark tank. Sarah, bless her optimistic heart, still thinks she can change these kids through the power of rules and mutual respect. The delinquents, however, aren't exactly interested in a syllabus. They treat her arrival like a new toy to break. As Sarah tries to establish some basic classroom decorum, the disrespect is immediate and suffocating. One guy, a total cliche of a school bully named Jaeho, decides he's bored of her talking. Instead of raising his hand, he hurls an object straight at her face. Sarah barely has time to react, bringing her hands up as something slams into her. Just when you think the classroom couldn't get any more unhinged, another genius decides to challenge Jaeho over some misplaced property. Big mistake. Jaeho doesn't even bother with a clever comeback. He just blacks out for a second and literally defenestrates the guy. Yes, he throws a human being out of a window like he's taking out the trash. The rest of the class, they don't call an ambulance. They don't even look shocked. Instead, they all pile out after them like it's the halftime show at a stadium, placing bets on whether Jaeho is going to add another tally to his 50-fight win streak for the month. It's a total circus of violence, and the main attraction is happening right in the school garden. Eventually, the school's unofficial warden, Tam Ken, huffs and puffs his way onto the scene, but he's about as effective as a wet match. By the time he gets there, the kids have already scattered into the wind. Does he comfort the traumatized teacher? Of course not. He spends his remaining breath berating Sarah for just standing there, basically telling her that temporary teachers have zero backbone and even less responsibility. It's the ultimate welcome to the jungle moment. Left alone to deal with the aftermath, Sarah starts picking up the shards of the broken window. Naturally, the universe decides she hasn't suffered enough, and a piece of glass slices right into her hand. As the blood starts to drip, so do the tears. Everything is hitting her at once. The disrespect, the isolation, the sheer hopelessness of this opportunity. But then, out of nowhere, a band-aid appears. Gaiman, the kid who's been playing the part of a background character this whole time, steps up. When Sarah looks up, her eyes go wide. She finally recognizes him, the kid she used to tutor. She's hit with a wave of instant regret, realizing that leaving her tutoring gig for a teaching license might have been the worst career move in human history. Gaiman, being the surprisingly intuitive guy he is, asks her point blank if she's really going to stay in this dumpster fire of a school. Sarah, despite the tears and the bleeding hand, finds that classic shonen protagonist resolve. She tells him this is just the beginning. She's convinced that even the most broken kids can find the right path if someone is willing to walk with them. It's a beautiful, noble sentiment, but unfortunately, it's immediately put to the test by a group of delinquents who walk by looking for their next hit of dopamine. They're talking about how to ruin people's lives while lighting up cigarettes right in front of her. Gaiman tries to warn her to stay away, especially from Jaeho's crew, who are basically the apex predators of this ecosystem, but she doesn't listen. She's on a mission. She steps right into their path and tells them to put out the smokes. Gaiman is internally screaming, watching her try to use health advice on a guy who uses broken teeth as currency. Jaeho, being the charming fellow he is, informs her that smoking isn't actually against the rules here because the janitors already gave up on cleaning. When she doubles down with a kind smile, trying to help them step by step, Jaeho decides he's had enough of the after-school special vibe. He slaps her hard. Gaiman freezes. The bullies start laughing, already imagining the headlines about the pathetic temporary teacher who couldn't handle her students. They start talking about teaching her a lesson that she'll actually remember, and Sarah is curled up on the ground, terrified, wondering if this is how it ends. But while they're busy being the villains of the week, something inside Gaiman finally snaps. He remembers everything she said to him about never giving up on people. He remembers the effort she put into his failing grades. The nerd mask finally falls off. He walks out into the center of the nightmare and tosses his jacket over Sarah. He tells her, with zero hesitation, that he knew she wouldn't be able to talk sense into these animals. One of the thugs tries to lunge at him, expecting an easy win against the four-eyed bookworm, but Gaiman isn't there anymore. He's a blur of motion. He slams the first guy into the pavement before his brain can even register that he's been hit. The others start mocking him, calling him a moth for trying to fly into the flame, but they don't realize Gaiman is the one holding the flamethrower. This is the secret he's been hiding. His entire life is built on the philosophy of Bruce Lee. He's not just some kid who likes movies. He spent every waking hour training in Jeet Kune Do. He delivers a punch to the gut that sends one delinquent flying back like he's been hit by a truck. Jaeho, realizing this isn't a normal nerd, decides to get serious, but it's already too late. Gaiman is in the zone. He recalls the training, the discipline, the thousands of hours spent mastering the way of the dragon. As Jaeho closes in, Gaiman executes a perfect spinning kick that connects directly with the bully's jaw. It's not just a knockdown, it's a total system failure. Jaeho hits the dirt, foaming at the mouth, completely unconscious. His lackeys, seeing their kingpin turned into a floor mat, suddenly find their cardio and sprint away, leaving Jaeho's lifeless body behind. Gaiman stands there, catching his breath, the silence of the garden finally returning. He turns to a stunned Sarah and offers her his hand. He knows he can't hide his skills anymore, so he makes a deal. He'll take back his advice about her leaving this school, but only if she promises to never give up on his education. Meanwhile, the news of Jaeho's humiliating defeat reaches the ears of the school's actual heavy hitters. To them, Gaiman is just a lucky face with a death wish. They aren't impressed, they're annoyed. Their logic is simple. Either Gaiman transfers out with his tail between his legs, or he stays and gets buried. It's a lovely welcome to the neighborhood vibe, but Gaiman isn't exactly shaking in his boots. Instead, he's out here at dawn, turning the local park into his personal dojo. The security guard is basically his biggest fan at this point, marveling at the kid's physique and the sheer artistry of his movement. But Gaiman doesn't have time for a fan club. He realizes he's late and sprints home, pulling off a high-stakes stealth mission to sneak back into his room before his mom wakes him up for school. It's a classic move, pretending to be a lazy student when you've actually been out perfecting a flying sidekick for 3 hours. The next morning, Sarah drags herself to the school gates on 3 hours of sleep and pure anxiety. She's trying to convince herself she can do this, but you can see the cracks in her resolve. Gamin is watching her from the shadows, already thinking 10 steps ahead. Gamin's strategy for getting into university doesn't start with a textbook, but with finding the right teammates. He scans the room, quickly dismissing the first few options as academic lost causes who have clearly given up on a future. His eyes eventually land on Sehun, whom he identifies as the perfect candidate. Unlike the rest of the class, Sehun actually looks like he's mentally present, possessing the focus and discipline Gaiman needs for a serious study partner. However, recruitment goes south immediately. Sehun wants no part of Gaiman's plan, telling him to back off before storming out to the bathroom to get away from the weirdo. As Sehun washes his hands, he's fuming, thinking about how dangerously annoying Gaiman is. In a school like this, just being seen as someone who wants to study is enough to put a target on your back for every bully in the building. His train of thought is interrupted when a hand suddenly drops onto his shoulder from behind. Assuming Gaiman has followed him to beg some more, Sehun's patience snaps. He shoves the hand off and yells at him to quit it, only to realize with a jolt of terror that the person behind him isn't Gammon at all. It was Minho, one of the school's absolute terrors. Suddenly, the academic dream turns into a survival horror game. Back in the faculty room, the principal is busy being a total corporate shill. He doesn't care that kids are breaking windows or each other's faces. He just cares about the upcoming school inspection. He tells Sarah to keep things quiet, which is like asking someone to keep a volcano quiet with a shush sign. The silence is broken pretty quickly when Minho starts using Sehun as a human punching bag in the mechanic lab. He's got an iron pipe and a very bad attitude. Sarah sees the violence. She wanted to act, but her body just quits on her. She remembers the laughter, the disrespect, the slap to the face. She collapses, paralyzed by fear, until Gammon shows up and literally pulls her back to her feet. He tells her the floor is too dirty for her to be sitting on, and promises he's going to save Sehun, not just out of the goodness of his heart, but because he needs the kid for a study group. And honestly, you can't blame Gammon for being this desperate. 3 years ago, he was a different kid. He heard a woman bragging about how a study group boosted her son's grades, and he wanted that dream so badly. But when he tried to join the smart kids, they treated him like a virus. They laughed at his bottom tier rankings and told him he didn't belong. Even his own mom, trying to be protective, thinks he'd be better off studying alone because he was too shy. That rejection burned. He went home and broke down, staring at a test paper full of wrong answers and red ink, feeling that soul-crushing sting of being told he's not good enough for the Smart Kids Club. To Gamin, a study group isn't just about grades. It's the ultimate dream of belonging. He realizes his only path to university is forming a squad with people of his own caliber, starting with a rescue mission to bring Sehun into the fold. But Sarah isn't having it. She catches his arm before he can vanish into his own self-pity. She's stuttering, clearly shaken from the day before, but she's firm on one thing. School is for studying, not for reenacting Fight Club. She begs him to stay focused, and for a second, Gamin actually smiles. He agrees to keep his hands clean, but the universe clearly didn't get the memo. Inside the mechanic lab, things are getting ugly. Minho is about to turn Sehun into a permanent part of the floorboards, and Gammon realizes he can't just stand there and recite vocabulary lists. But he's a man of his word. He won't fight. Instead, he decides to play chemist. He grabs a fire extinguisher and floods the room with a massive, choking smokescreen. It's pure chaos. The thugs are hacking up their lungs, screaming about who dared to interrupt their lesson, when Gammon lunges through the fog wearing a gas mask, like some kind of urban phantom. He doesn't throw a punch. He just uses the momentum to tackle his way through the crowd and drag Sehun toward the exit. It's flashy, it's dramatic, and it's arguably way more work than just hitting someone. But Gammon is committed to the bit. Once they're outside, Sehun is absolutely losing it. He isn't grateful. He's terrified. He knows exactly who he just ran from. The Annoy Gang, the iron body psychos who were raised by gangsters. He tells Gammon to stop playing hero, because in a place like Yusong Tech, being an easy target is a survival strategy. If you get beaten down fast, maybe they'll get bored and move on. But Gammon's intervention just puts Sehun on the top of the to-do list. Sehun is screaming now, his voice cracking as he tells Gammon that his mask is just a way to hide from the reality of the school. He thinks Gammon is just another guy playing hero to feel good, and that rejection hits Gammon harder than a spinning back kick. Sehun tries to walk away, but Minho is already there, looming like a nightmare. Gammon quickly shoves his mask back on, hiding in the shadows. While Sehun tries to do the bravest thing he's ever done, he lies. He tells the gangster he has no idea who the masked guy is, trying to protect Gammon even though he's trembling so hard he can barely stand. Minho doesn't buy it for a second. He's tired of the games and decides to beat the truth out of Sehun, threatening to record the whole humiliation and blast it across the internet. Watching from the corner, Gammon realizes Sehun is taking the heat for him. He remembers Sehun saying that safety is more important than studying, but here the kid is, risking his life to keep Gammon's secret. That's all the motivation Gammon needs. He drops the mask. No more hiding. He steps out into the light, and before Minho can finish his villain monologue, Gammon's foot is already connecting with his face. The gangster hits the dirt, and the atmosphere shifts from a bullying session to a legitimate war zone. Sehun can't believe his eyes. The nerd who can't pass a math quiz is standing over a legendary thug, like he's taking out the trash. Gammon doesn't even look at the fallen bully. He just turns to Sehun and asks, one more time, if he'll join the study group. It's absurd. It's peak Gammon. He's offering a syllabus in the middle of a fight. Minho scrambles back to his feet, absolutely livid, but Gammon is already calculating his next move. As the gangster lunges with everything he's got, Gammon just flows around him like water. He's not even breaking a sweat. He's explaining the study plan while dodging strikes that would cave in a normal person's ribs. Minho is realizing this isn't luck. Every time he swings, Gammon is already 3 steps ahead, tracking his every movement with the precision of a computer. The bully tries to claim that this school only respects fists, and that a nerd like Gammon can't change the ecosystem of Yusong Tech, but Gammon just catches his hand midair. The grip is industrial grade. Minho's eyes go wide as he realizes that the 4-eyed insect he was mocking has a physical strength that makes no sense. Even though Gammon keeps insisting he's a pacifist, he's currently treating the school's top bully like a mild inconvenience. While Minho is busy recalculating his entire life path, Gammon turns to Sehun and basically forces him into the study group with a whisper. He's out here pitching a math club while standing over a defeated gangster. It's peak chaotic energy. Sehun is paralyzed. He can't believe Minho just got handled so easily. But then Gammon hits him with the million-dollar question. Don't you actually want to learn? That question triggers a flood of repressed trauma for Sehun. He remembers every time his classmates bullied him for opening a book, and how his own father treated vocational training like a prison sentence, forbidding him from ever dreaming of a real university. But looking at Gammon, Sehun finally snaps out of his shell. He smiles, says yes, and just like that, Gammon has his first recruit. The two of them walk off as the bell rings, leaving Minho to rot in the dirt, his reputation currently sitting in the school's dumpster. But if you thought the drama ended with Minho, think again. Enter Hangu, the actual shark in these waters. He's the boss's son, and he's not impressed by Minho's failure. He finds the white streak left by the fire extinguisher and follows it like a blood trail. When Minho tries to stand back up, Hangu doesn't offer a hand, he offers a fist. He knocks him right back into the dirt, basically telling him that if some mystery nerd from Class 1 is running the show, then the old hierarchy is officially dead. Hangu is curious now. He wants to see how long Gammon's academic resolve actually lasts in a school where hope goes to die. Meanwhile, our favorite warden, Tam Ken, is busy complaining about the trash. He treats the school like his personal kingdom, but does zero actual work. He decides to pawn his duties off on someone else and stumbles upon Sarah in the lab. She's currently scrubbing fire extinguisher foam off the walls, trying to hide Gammon's extracurricular activities. She's sweating bullets, imagining the warden's reaction to the mess. When a new player enters the game, this mysterious kid named Gunzo just steps out of the shadows and casually takes the blame. He lies to the warden's face with a polite smile, claiming he's the one who made the mess. Tam Ken, who is surprisingly easily manipulated by a polite student, just lets it go. Sarah is stunned. Who is this guy? Is he Gammon's friend? Why is he protecting her? Gunzo just bows and tells her he'll finish the cleanup, leaving Sarah completely bewildered as Tamken drags her off to deal with the official inspection team. Back in the classroom, Sehun is trying to teach Gammon the Pythagorean theorem, and it is a struggle. Gammon is a god-tier fighter, but academically, he's basically operating on dial-up internet. He remembers the math vaguely, which we all know is student code for "I have zero idea what's happening." Sehun, realizing his new friend is a lost cause without help, pulls out his secret weapon, the Master Notes. It's a handwritten, perfectly organized, holy grail of knowledge from the 9th grade up. It's the only way Gammon can transition from failing to slightly less failing. But the piece lasts about 5 seconds. Minho is back, and he's brought a chair with him, which he promptly smashes over Gammon's head. He orders everyone out, his pride still stinging from the earlier beating. He grabs Sehun's precious notebook and realizes it's a detailed study guide. In a school of delinquents, this notebook is basically heresy. Minho pulls out a lighter, ready to turn Sehun's hard work into ash, and Gammon is forced to stand up, blood dripping down his face, realizing that some people just won't let you learn in peace. While the classroom is about to become a bonfire, the school administration is having a collective heart attack. The inspectors are here, and they're ripping the principal a new one. The school is failing to recruit students because it's basically a gladiator pit, and the board is threatening to cut funding. They walk past Sarah, who is still standing by the trash cans, looking like she's had the worst week of her life. The lead inspector stops dead. He looks at her, eyes narrowing, and asks if they've met before. He's convinced she's famous, or at least familiar, but the principal cuts him off before Sarah has to explain her life story, ushering the VIPs toward the mechanic lab. The inspector is currently being fed a pile of corporate lies about student safety and upgraded equipment. But the universe has other plans. Just as the vice principal is finishing his sales pitch, Sehun pulls a classic main character move and crashes the party, looking like he just ran a marathon through a war zone. He's panicked, breathless, and reporting a literal inferno in the classroom. Instead of, calling the fire department like a sane person, the vice principal tries to gaslight everyone into believing it's just a faulty light bulb. It's peak Yusong Tech administration, trying to shush a fire, while the building is actively trying to become charcoal. He drags the warden away to do some desperate damage control, whispering about fixing light bulbs, while Sehun and Sarah sprint toward the actual disaster. Rewind a few minutes to the center of the dumpster fire. Minho is busy playing with matches, dropping Sehun's master notes into the flames like a standard-issue sociopath. Sehun is forced to watch his entire academic lifeline turn into ash, and Gaiman, bless his dedicated heart, is taking hits while trying to pull the burning book from the pyre. He isn't even fighting back at first. He's just mourning the loss of the information. He's a guy who values a well-organized notebook more than his own ribcage. But then, the smoke clears just enough for Gammon to realize that the peaceful student life he wanted is officially over. See that look on the protagonist's face? That's not just anger. That's the expression of a man who is officially disconnected from his humanity and decided to let the inner demon take the wheel. Sehun feels the shift instantly, a cold pit in his stomach, telling him that whatever happens next isn't just a fight, it's a catastrophe. You have to understand why this hurts so much. That notebook wasn't just a collection of study notes. It was the one thing keeping our boy's head above water. Seun gave it to him with that classic, proud look of his, basically telling him it was his one-way ticket from being a total lost cause to at least being a functional human being. And now, it's just gray ash, fluttering on the floor. Our MC actually tries to be the bigger person for half a second. He gives this bottom-tier thug one last exit ramp, one final chance to just say sorry to Sehun and walk away with his teeth still in his head. But of course, this guy is a professional at making the worst possible decisions. He stays arrogant, doubling down like a true peaked in high school cliche, telling Gaiman that he's the next thing on the burning list. That was the wrong answer. The thug charges in, probably expecting a typical scuffle, but he's walking into a wood chipper. Gaiman doesn't even seem to be trying. It's an effortless trip, a closing of the distance, and then a series of combination punches that are more about surgery than brawling. But credit where it's due, the bully has the kind of stubbornness that usually gets people killed. He manages to scramble back up and, in a moment of pure, I've lost my mind desperation, grabs the burning backpack and hurls it at Gammon. This is where the protagonist goes full main character mode. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't dodge. He catches the flaming bag with his foot like he's playing professional soccer, lifting his leg in a perfect, fiery arc that looks more like a scene from a high-budget action flick than a classroom fight. The bully's heart finally hits his shoes because he realizes he's not fighting a student anymore. He's fighting a force of nature. What follows is a face-restructuring kick that's going to make his dentist a very wealthy man. Just as the teacher and Sehun catch their breath, they get a front row seat to the finale. Minho literally flying out of the classroom like he's been shot out of a cannon, looking completely unrecognizable. Gaiman stalks out after him, his sanity still nowhere to be found, demanding the guy apologize before he's allowed to pass out. He looks over at the teacher, probably about to say something like, "Don't worry, I've got this under control," but the words die in his throat, because right there, soaking in the arson, the assault, and the absolute wreckage of the hallway, is the school inspector. Our hero didn't just win the fight, he just signed his own expulsion papers in front of the one person who can end his entire future. We cut straight to the vice principal's office, where the man is currently having a high decibel meltdown. He's tearing into the teacher like it's her fault. Gammon decided to go full MMA on the exact day the school inspector is walking the halls. To the VP, Gammon is just a low-life scumbag, ruining the school's prestige, but the teacher is seeing a different picture. She's thinking about the kid who actually begged her for help, the one who only snapped because some bottom feeder torched his last scrap of hope. She's about to grow a backbone and defend him when the inspector himself glides into the room, chilling the air instantly. The VP immediately switches to full kiss-up mode, promising to handle the situation, which is code for throwing Gammon under the nearest bus. But the inspector isn't here for the PR fluff. He wants the kid brought in now, and he's dragging the teacher along for the ride. The stakes just went from a simple school scrap to a full-blown interrogation. Cut to the reflection room, and Gammon is sitting in the dark, staring at his hands. He's spiraling. He's not worried about the bullies. He's worried about his mom. He's picturing her face when she hears her "good boy" has been expelled because he was involved in a classroom fire and a hallway brawl. He's convinced his dream is dead until the door opens. It's Sehun. Instead of being mad or scared, Sehun actually steps up. He closes the door and acknowledges Gammon as the official leader of their group. He's trying to be the emotional anchor, even though he's still shaking. Sehun can't wrap his head around why Gammon would go full John Wick over a notebook, But when he sees the look on Gamon's face, he realizes this wasn't about paper and ink. For a kid who spent his life being told his brain is a brick, seeing Sehun's notes, the sheer, organized effort of a human soul, was like seeing a holy relic. Gamon admits that his own notes usually turn into a scribbled mess of failure, so seeing Sehun's perfection was the first time he felt like intelligence was something he could actually touch. He's mourning the loss of that hope, but Sehun pulls a classic move and hands him back his glasses. They're a bit yellowed and beat up, but it's the ultimate we're in this together moment. They're finally helping each other, and for a split second, it feels like a real friendship, until the door flies open and reality comes crashing back in. The vice principal storms in, looking like he's about to pop a blood vessel, because instead of reflecting on his crimes, Gamon is busy having a heart-to-heart. The VP is playing the role of the concerned educator, pointing at Gamon and calling him a rebellious thug who can't control his temper. He's basically throwing Gamon under the bus to save the school's reputation, telling the inspectors that this kid is a rare anomaly and they'll expel him to keep the peace. It's the ultimate corporate snake move, and Gamon is standing there, paralyzed, watching his future being shredded by a guy in a suit. But Sarah isn't having it. She sees the corruption, the fake concern, and the way they're treating a kid who was literally pushed into a fire. She's quiet for a second, but then she snaps. She calls out the entire school system, telling them that the real problem isn't the kids. It's the institution that forced them to use their fists just to survive. She's shaking, her voice is cracking, but she's standing tall. She tells the VP that if he expels Gamon, she's going to protest. She's willing to lose her job to make sure Gamon doesn't become another victim of their administrative laziness. She's done being the polite temporary teacher. She's the real MVP now. And even the inspector is looking at her like he's seeing a ghost. And he kind of is. The inspector finally connects the dots and realizes who she is. Last year's top candidate for the teaching certificate. The one who could have gone to any elite school in the country, but just vanished. While the adults are having their power struggle, we see the ripple effects in the medical room. Two low-tier bullies are busy talking trash about Minho, calling him a coward for losing to a first-year nerd. That is, until the actual shark in the water shows up. The White Lead's director's son decides to humble them by knocking their heads together like they're two coconuts. Hongju swaggers into the infirmary with that king of the school energy, ready to drop some grade-A insults about how pathetic his buddy looks after a beating. But mid-roast, his smug grin doesn't just fade, it gets deleted. One look at whatever is off camera, and his face hits a wall of pure, unadulterated terror. He isn't the predator anymore. He's looking at his own grave. Back in the faculty room, the tension is suffocating. Sarah is doubling down, calling out the VP's rules as nothing more than empty words. She points out that the school has abandoned its duty to these kids, leaving them to fight for scraps in a lawless wasteland. The VP is livid, accusing her of trying to lecture him in front of the authorities, but the inspector actually starts laughing. He's genuinely impressed. He's never heard a teacher talk like this, and he's fascinated by Sarah's choice to stay in this dumpster fire. He asks her what she actually wants to change, and the VP is sputtering, trying to claim that she's just a temporary teacher with no power. But Sarah has a plan, and it's a total academic no reverse card. She remembers everything Gaiman told her about wanting to learn, and she realizes that the only way to save him, and the school, is to lean into that dream. She looks the inspector in the eye and pitches her grand idea, a study group. She claims it's Gaiman's idea, putting the focus back on the students' desire to reform. The inspector, who clearly loves a good underdog story, is all in. He tells the VP to support it, basically holding the school's funding over his head as collateral. The VP is dying inside, watching his delinquent target get a government-mandated shield. He is still trying to play the delinquents are a waste of time card, practically begging the inspector to wrap this up. But the inspector isn't just checking boxes. He's actually intrigued. He shuts the VP down, reminding him that if a student actually asks to learn, the school's only job is to get out of the way. He even throws in a little threat about that perfect fire alarm system that failed to make a peep while the building was turning into charcoal. It's a total administrative smackdown. As the inspector leaves, we see him get into his car and find his son, Gunzo, sitting in the back. Gunzo is currently wiping blood off his hands with a smile that'll give you nightmares. And on the other side of the scene, in the infirmary, Minho, who was just brutally beaten by the protagonist, is found tied up and has been tortured beyond recognition. It turns out the inspector knows exactly how rotten this school is. He's just waiting for the whole place to implode so it can be shut down for good. Back at school, Sarah and Gaiman are actually doing it. They're making the study group official, putting up posters in the hallway like they're recruiting for a chess club in the middle of a prison riot. the rest of the students are having a field day, mocking Gaiman for thinking a few books can change the fact that he's a target. Sehun is watching from the sidelines, feeling the heat, while Gunzo, the mysterious kid who helped clean the lab, just stares at the bulletin board, smiling while hearing rumors about the infirmary incident. As evening falls, a new observer arrives at the board, Hangu. He reads the notice with pure disdain, mocking the idea of Gammon acting like a good boy and trying to turn the school into a place of learning. To Hangu, the sight of such a hopeful future is irritating. With a sadistic smile, he grips the edge of the paper and tears the announcement to pieces, signaling that Gaiman's dream of a peaceful study group has just made him a target for the school's most dangerous players. Fast forward to Saturday, and Sarah is visiting Gaiman's apartment complex. She's hit with a wave of nostalgia for her tutoring days, but the vibe is quickly ruined by the local security guard sprinting past her like he's being chased by a ghost. She follows him and finds Gaiman in the middle of an intense workout. We're talking a physique that looks like it was sculpted by Bruce Lee himself. Sarah is so stunned she literally falls over, and the guard has to tell her to stop being a distraction. Gammon, realizing he's been caught being a literal superhero in training, tries to play it cool. They head to a bookstore, which is Sarah's happy place. She's acting like a total book-buying expert, stacking up a mountain of textbooks while Gaiman sneaks off to find a limited edition Bruce Lee interview book. It's a rare moment of peace. Sarah gets vulnerable for a second, admitting that she might have passed the teaching exams with flying colors, but her heart isn't nearly as strong as Gammon's. She realizes that being a good teacher and being good at tests are two completely different beasts. She asks Gaiman for his help, and they share a brief, awkward shonen protagonist moment before a bratty kid nearby throws a book at her. Gaiman catches it with superhuman reflexes, because of course he does. The day ends on a high note, or so they think. Sarah gets home feeling refreshed, but her front door is already open. Inside, the nightmare has returned. Jaeho and his gang are lounging in her room like they own the place. They're trashing her apartment, laughing about how the police won't show up until after the damage is done. They've realized that the best way to break Gaiman is to destroy the woman trying to save him. Gaiman is halfway home when he realizes he left his Bruce Lee book in Sarah's bag. If it were anything else, he probably wouldn't have gone back, but that book is his Bible. The scene shifts to Hangu lounging on a couch with a girl, completely unbothered by the chaos Gammon has caused. His associate, Hongju, is vibrating with fury, unable to understand how Hangul can ignore the fact that Minho was just brutally taken out. Hongju shouts in a desperate rage, demanding to know if Hanu is really going to turn a blind eye to the humiliation of one of their own. Hangu, however, finds the outburst irritating. He coldly orders Hongju to shut up, mocking him for staining the room with his saliva through his emotional chatter. To Hangu, Minho was never a true peer, merely an idiot who happened to share their father's line of work but lacked the caliber to actually join their inner circle. He dismisses the idea of immediate revenge, suggesting they focus on having fun instead. As Hangu looks away, he reveals his disturbing worldview. He explains that there is a unique joy in watching an innocent child, someone who once dutifully attended an academy with a serious expression, discover the dark thrill of oppressing others. In Hangu's eyes, anyone who tastes true power is destined to change into a monster. With a sadistic curiosity, he sets his sights on Gammon, wondering aloud just how quickly he can corrupt the protagonist and watch his good boy persona crumble into something far more cruel. His plan is as twisted as it is simple. He's sending Jaeho's crew to terrorize the teacher because he wants to see how Gaiman reacts when his safe space starts bleeding. He's not just looking for a fight, he's looking to perform a total character assassination on Gammon's soul. Meanwhile, Jaeho and his band of rejects are currently making themselves at home in Sarah's apartment, acting like absolute bottom-tier human beings. The scene is nauseating. Jaeho is literally slapping her around and bragging about the psychological trauma he's about to inflict. He gives her the classic, "police are useless" speech, claiming that by the time the sirens start, she'll already be broken beyond repair. He's ordering his goons to trash the place, wanting to make sure she never dares to pick up a textbook ever again. Just as he's grabbing her by the hair, and the situation is hitting rock bottom, the door flies open. Enter Gunzo. He walks into the wreckage with the kind of calm energy you only see in people who have absolutely nothing left to lose. He's looking at Jaeho like he's a stain on the rug, mocking him for trying to act refined when everyone knows he's just a glorified errand boy for Hangu. The lackeys try to jump him, but Gunzo isn't here to play. He starts folding them like laundry before they can even process that they're being hit. Jaeho is stunned, realizing that Gunzo isn't just some random passerby. He's a guy with a very specific, very dangerous agenda. The tension in the room is suffocating. Jaeho strikes with terrifying precision, aiming a heavy blow directly at the right side of his Gunzo's body, a spot he knows is a lingering weakness. It's a chilling reveal that Jaeho knows exactly who he's fighting. As the blow lands, he begins to recount a specific incident from their middle school days, making it clear that the past his target tried to leave behind has finally caught up with him. Gunzo realizes he's outnumbered, and the odds are stacked against him, so he makes a high IQ play. He smashes a window to create a chaotic distraction and drags Sarah out of the apartment. It's a desperate sprint for survival, but Honggu is a step ahead. He's already stationed a second group of thugs at the end of the alley. They run right into a dead end, cornered by a wall of muscle and bad intentions. Meanwhile, Gaiman is standing on a street corner, staring at his phone like it's a ticking bomb. He's been calling Sarah for hours, but it's going straight to voicemail. He's trying to convince himself that she's just sleeping, but his gut is telling him something else. Just as he's about to head home, he sees Jaeho's crew sprinting through the neighborhood like they just robbed a bank. His instincts kick in. He knows that wherever those guys are going, there's a disaster waiting to happen. Back in the alley, things are getting medieval. The thugs are comparing the teacher to the photos they were given by Honggu. They're mocking Gunzo for protecting a teacher, telling him he should have just stayed in his lane. The air shifts as one of the thugs suddenly recognizes Gunzo, identifying him as the infamous American transfer student from their middle school years. Back then, Gunzo was the powerhouse second in command who had utterly humiliated this very delinquent for the petty crime of shaking down freshmen for their money. Driven by years of resentment and screaming about restoring order, the delinquent lunges forward with a desperate kick. Gunzo doesn't even flinch. He simply meets the attack with a heavy crowbar. The metal connects with sickening precision, shattering the delinquent's leg and silencing his grand speech along with his ability to stand. He's telling them that ranks and titles don't mean anything when you're staring at a piece of rusted iron. Sarah is watching the weaponed thugs from the sidelines, and the reality is finally setting in. These aren't just misunderstood kids or troubled youths. They are monsters. She realizes she's been trying to use a syllabus to stop a hurricane. She's terrified, looking for any way to call for help, but Jaeho is already closing the distance. He's disappointed that Sarah ran away from her students, but he figures he can still finish what he started. He moves in for another slap, his hand high in the air, ready to humiliate her one more time. But he never connects. From the shadows, a hand suddenly cinches around Jaeho's hood, yanking him back with bone-chilling force. Gaiman has arrived. He's not the quiet student anymore. He's a force of nature. He tells Jaeho to stop right there, with a voice that sounds like a death sentence. He hurls the bully back like he weighs nothing, standing in front of Sarah as her literal human shield. Sarah is naturally losing her mind, wondering how he even found them. Gaiman, being the absolute king of awkward timing, just bows his head and claims he only came back because he left his book in her bag. Imagine being cornered by a literal street gang and your student shows up like, "Hey, can I get my Bruce Lee fanfic back?" It's peak Gammon behavior. Jaeho isn't amused. He's had enough of this four-eyed cockroach ruining his vibe, so he and his goons try a pincer attack. Bad idea. Gammon doesn't even let them close the distance. He launches into the air and delivers a double kick that sends both of them sliding across the asphalt. Jaeho's nose is already doing its best impression of a leaking faucet, and the guy is finally starting to realize that Gaiman isn't just lucky, he's a glitch in the Matrix. But it's not a solo act yet. Gunzo is still in the mix, but he's currently taking a heavy chain to the ribs. The thugs think they've finally got a win, but Gammon moves in like a ghost. He doesn't just hit them, he disarms them. He grabs a wooden stick and a chain, and right there, in the middle of the street, he crafts a set of makeshift nunchaku. And because he's a total academic psychopath, he chooses this exact moment, with people literally swinging at his head, to ask Gunzo if his English is good since he moved from America. Gaiman's brain is genuinely a mystery, wrapped in an enigma, and tied with a black belt. He goes full times, Enter the Dragon. Every thug that lunges gets a face full of wood and chain. It's not even a fight anymore. It's a choreographed demolition. He's wrapping chains around necks and tossing people like they're made of cardboard. Within minutes, the entire squad is groan crying on the pavement, while Gammon stands there without a single scratch on his uniform. He just tosses the nunchaku away, complaining that he couldn't even use their full potential because he just came up with the idea on the fly. The absolute disrespect. Sarah finally manages to breathe, but the relief doesn't last. She's worried about Gammon's injuries, but Gunzo has officially checked out of reality. He's standing over a half-conscious Jaeho, smashing a glass bottle over his head just to wake him up. Gunzo is through playing hero. He's looking for answers about a cold-blooded murder from last year, the one the white lead gang is definitely hiding. The atmosphere goes from school brawl to true crime documentary real quick. Gunzo is pressing a rusted crowbar against Jaeho's neck, his eyes looking like voids. He's rambling about school security and broken deals, but what he's really doing is looking for a reason to snap. He's convinced Jaeho knows who the killer is because of his ties to the gang. He raises the crowbar, ready to deliver a permanent lobotomy, and the entire neighborhood hears Jaeho's pathetic, soul-shattering scream. But Gamin isn't going to let his new study buddy become a murderer. He catches the crowbar mid-swing, telling Gunzo he's taking things way too far. Gunzo finally drops the polite act. He's screaming now, telling Gamin that too far isn't a thing when your mother has already been taken from you. He doesn't want a study group. He wants blood. He tells Gamin to get out of his way before he gets added to the body count. Gamin is stunned. Gunzo's mom was murdered? Suddenly, the edgy, bad boy act makes a lot more sense. This kid has been walking through a personal hell while everyone else was worrying about their SATs. So Gamin finally lets go of that crowbar, and for a second, you think he's going to let Gunzo finish the job. Instead, he delivers a reality check straight to Jaeho's face, grabbing the punk and slamming him against the wall like he's trying to shake the truth out of his soul. Gamin is vibrating with pure, unadulterated rage, screaming for an answer to a question that shouldn't even be asked by a teenager. Are you the murderer? It's a heavy, suffocating moment where the line between a school kid and a criminal completely vanishes. But Gunzo, the guy who is just seconds away from a life sentence, is the one who brings everyone back to Earth. He realizes Gamin is spiraling and pulls him back, mocking the idea that a bottom-tier loser like Jaeho could actually take a life. He sees the truth for what it is. Jaeho isn't a mastermind. He's just a glorified errand boy, a slave to Hangu, who gets off on hurting people because he doesn't have the spine to be anything else. Gunzo admits he was just using the kid as a stress ball for his own trauma, which is a pretty dark confession. But in this neighborhood, it's basically a Tuesday. Gamin hears the name Hangu again, and you can see the gears turning in his head. He's starting to realize that all these separate threads of violence lead back to one person. Gunzo, done with the theatrics, hands Gamin's things back and basically tells him that their partnership is a one-time deal. Gamin looks at him and sees someone wearing a skin that doesn't fit, a wolf in a sheep's clothing. He vanishes into the night, leaving Gamin and Sarah to deal with the pathetic remains of Jaeho. Sarah is left looking at this boy who just broke into her home. She sees a kid trapped in a social hierarchy that only offers two options: be the hammer or be the nail. It's a cycle of abuse that's turned these children into something unrecognizable. While she's trying to find the humanity in a kid who just trashed her life, Hangu is back at his high-rise, watching the news and laughing like a kid with a new ant farm. The absolute disconnect between the people suffering on the street and the guy pulling the strings is enough to make your skin crawl. Sarah hands Gamin his book, her priority shifting instantly back to his future. She tells him to head home and focus on his studies, refusing to let the violence of the night derail his academic goals. Leaving the battlefield behind, she heads straight to the police station to ensure the law handles the aftermath of the confrontation. Monday rolls around, and the peace is short-lived. The vice principal is back on his power trip, giving Sarah a literal ultimatum: find 5 members for the study group by the deadline, or the whole project gets tossed into the furnace. Sehun is already in doom and gloom mode, convinced that nobody in their right mind would join a group that basically paints a target on your forehead. But Sarah is riding that Teacher of the Year high and refuses to back down. She reveals that someone actually reached out to her, and she sends Gamin and Sehun on a recruitment mission that feels more like a prison break. The destination? The girls' department. Now, you have to understand, Yusong Tech is basically a segregated war zone. Boys and girls don't mix. And walking into the other side's territory is like crossing an international border without a passport. Gamin and Sehun are standing outside class 1-1, looking like they accidentally wandered into a minefield. Sehun finally hears the name of the recruit, Jihu, and he's ready to alt F4 out of existence. He realizes they're looking for Jaeho's twin sister, and in his mind, that just means double the trouble and twice the chance of getting a locker to the face. But when they finally see her, it's not what they expected. Jihu isn't the one throwing punches, she's the one taking them. A group of girls is circling her, led by a cliché mean girl who's mocking her for trying to be a good student. They're trashing her for her brother's debts and her psychotic attitude, but Jihu is just sitting there, taking it with a cold, dead-eyed stare. It's only when they try to put their hands on her friend, Hyun, that the beast wakes up. Jihu catches the bully's wrist with a grip that definitely runs in the family. She offers herself up as a punching bag just to keep her friend safe, showing a level of loyalty that's rare in a place this toxic. The bullies aren't impressed by the heroics though. They demand Jiho's spare uniform and mock the very idea of her studying. The lead girl decides to add a little insult to injury and prepares to spit her gum right onto Jiho's test prep papers. It's the ultimate sign of disrespect for someone who's actually trying to better themselves. But the gum never hits the paper. Gammon is suddenly there, catching the gum midair like it's a bullet. He looks at the study materials, genuinely admiring the effort Jiho put in. And for a second, the entire classroom is silent as they try to process this nerd's audacity. Sehun is outside, sweating bullets, realizing that Gammon's social skills are somehow even more dangerous than his kicks. The silence is broken by a new arrival, Kil-chin. He's a member of the student council and, more importantly, he's one of Hangul's top dogs. He sees Gammon, the kid who supposedly embarrassed Minho, and he's ready to make a name for himself. He demands to know why Gammon is sniffing around his girlfriend. Kil-chin is itching for a fight, but Gammon is playing the long game. He's hit with a sudden flashback of his own recklessness from a few days ago, realizing that if he lets his rage take the wheel again, his peaceful student cover is blown for good. He pulls the ultimate not today move and just pieces out, leaving Kil-chin laughing at what he thinks is a coward's retreat. Honestly, Kil-chin thinking Gammon is scared is like a fly thinking a windshield is backing down. Gammon walks away, genuinely hoping the supposed boyfriend will at least keep the other bullies off Jiho. Big mistake. The second Gammon's back is turned, the classroom vibe goes from toxic to radioactive. Kil-chin doesn't protect her, he targets her. He starts playing this sick psychological game, demanding her hand like he's some kind of twisted royalty, only to pull out a ruler and talk about generous punishment. He's mocking her, accusing her of being embarrassed in front of her friend, and the whole class is paralyzed. But the disrespect doesn't last. A wad of gum flies through the air and sticks right to Kil-chin's head. Gammon didn't actually leave. He's back, the glasses are off, and he's dropping the realest question of the day. If she's your girlfriend, why are you treating her like a human punching bag? Kil-chin is vibrating with ego-bruised rage, lunging at Gammon and calling him a cockroach who got lucky against Minho. Just as the classroom is about to become a crime scene, Tam Ken, the school's resident warden, barks from the doorway, dragging the student council members away for a mandatory meeting. Kil-chin leaves with a "see you later" that sounds more like a death threat, but Gammon just breathes a sigh of relief. He's more confused about how a student council member could walk around with piercings than he is about the threat to his life. Once the chaos settles, Hyun finally spills the tea to Sehun and Gammon. It turns out Jiho isn't a delinquent, she's a survivor. She learned judo to stop being a victim in middle school, but the universe gave her a twin brother named Jaeho, who is essentially a giant anchor. Jaeho is drowning in debt to Kil-chin, and the student council is using that as a leash. They've got videos of Jaeho fighting, and they're using them to blackmail Jaeho into being their silent, obedient soldier. It's the ultimate Yusong tech move. Find the one thing someone loves and use it to bury them. Hyun is transferring soon, and she's terrified Jiho will be left alone in this snake pit. She drops her pride and begs the boys to save her friend, wanting them to take her place as Jiho's study buddies. Sehun is internally screaming because he knows that fighting the student council is basically a fast track to the intensive care unit, but he's already too deep in the hero business to quit now. Gammon, bless his academic heart, is only focused on one thing, getting those videos back, so Jiho can finally focus on her textbooks. While the heist is being planned, Sarah is in the faculty room, trying to have a heart-to-heart with Hangul. She's asking about Jaeho, claiming she's heard they are close. Hangul immediately grows suspicious. He realizes the teacher is pretending nothing happened the previous Saturday, and wonders what she is really plotting. He plays it cool, denying any friendship, and claiming he only knows Jaeho because the boy owes his friend money. However, just as the conversation seems to hit a dead end, Hangul turns the tables. He reveals that Jaeho has a twin sister attending the same school, a girl named Jiho. Meanwhile, our boys are lurking outside the student council office. Inside, a council grunt named Doohun is gloating over the blackmail USB. He's a bottom feeder who thinks he's a shark, planning to copy the videos for his own sick entertainment while Kil-chin is out. He thinks he's the king of the room, completely oblivious to the fact that Gammon is already crouching behind the door like an urban legend. Sehun is whispering the cold, hard facts to Gamin, and they aren't pretty. At Yusong Tech, the student council isn't a club, it's a sanctioned criminal organization. They're the elite thugs who control the lesser bullies, and word on the street is that they're all just puppets for Hangul. Sehun is trying to explain that walking into that room isn't just a risk, it's a declaration of war against the entire school hierarchy. While Sehun and Hyun are busy having a mental breakdown about the sheer danger of it all, Gammon is standing there with that blank, academic stare. He doesn't care about the power dynamics or the junior mafia vibes. He just hears that there's a USB in that room that's stopping Jihu from being a productive member of his study group. And for Gammon, that's a declaration of war. He's walking into that office because being feared is one thing, but being an obstacle to higher education is a sin Gammon simply cannot forgive. Inside the council room, a grunt named Doohun is currently having a main character moment with the blackmail USB, thinking he's a genius for planning to copy the files behind everyone's back. He's looking for some cheap thrills, but he's really just a bottom feeder who doesn't realize he's about to be deleted. The door swings open, and Kilchin walks in, radiating that specific brand of insecure, school bully energy that thinks calling people pigs is a substitute for a personality. He catches Doohun red-handed and immediately treats him like a floor mat, slamming him down just to remind him who's actually the boss. Kilchin is in a foul mood because even the smallest hint of rebellion makes his ego itch, and he decides right then and there that the agreement with Jihu is officially over. He's going to upload the footage to YouTube, ruin her brother's life, and watch her entire world implode for the pure, sick joy of it. Gaiman is watching all of this from the shadows, hiding behind his glasses and a whole lot of repressed martial arts talent. He thinks back to what Heon said about Jihu's brother being her only family, and you can see the nerd rage starting to simmer. Outside, Sehun and Heon are trying to follow the script of a classic heist movie, attempting to start a fake fight to distract the council members. The problem? They are both way too wholesome for this. Watching them try to curse and act tough is like watching a puppy try to growl at a thunderstorm. It's pathetic, it's adorable, and it's completely failing until Jihu herself walks down the stairs and catches them in the act, looking at them like they're the weirdest people she's ever met. Meanwhile, back in the faculty lounge, Honggu gives Sarah that terrifying, dead-eyed smile and tells her that education is a luxury for those with a future, basically calling her a fool for caring about the garbage of Yusong Tech. He tells her to walk away from students like Jaeho, coldly claiming their lives are already over and that education is just a service, not a duty. But Sarah is starting to realize that the only way to save these kids is to fight for them in ways the school handbook doesn't cover. Inside the student council office, the piece is officially over. Gamin makes his move, and it's a total clinic in efficient violence. He's tearing through the council members like they're made of wet paper. But Kilchin isn't just another thug. He's a specialist. He gets in Gamon's face, mocking him for having a crush on Jihu, and claiming that Gamon doesn't belong in this world of real criminals. He thinks he's identified Gamon's weakness, but he's making the classic mistake of assuming Gamon is normal. The fight gets intense. Kilchin actually has some power behind his movements, and he manages to grab Gammon, launching him across the room with a throw that would have ended most kids. But Gammon isn't most kids. Kilchin is currently riding a massive ego trip, convinced that tossing Gammon across the room is a win. He's busy mocking Gammon for trying to act like a senior mentor from hell, but he's too stupid to realize he just gave Gammon front row seats to the prize. Gammon isn't checking his pulse, he's checking the USB port. The moment he sees that little piece of plastic, the nerd rage hits a new level. Kilchin tries to lunge, but Gammon is done playing nice. He pockets the USB and delivers a kick so clean, it probably reorganized Kilchin's dental records on the spot. While the student council office is turning into a demolition zone, Doohun finally wakes up just in time to see his boss getting dismantled by a first year. It's a total reality check. Gammon doesn't just hit hard, he hits smart. He grabs a spare jacket and hoods Kilchin like a falcon, using the guy's own lack of vision to turn him into a human speed bag. It's brutal, it's efficient, and it's the ultimate know your place moment. Gammon leaves them groveling, reminding them that Jihu isn't a toy they get to play with. But Kilchin isn't just a thug, he's a spiteful little rat. He scrambles to the computer, bleeding and shaking. He's already started the upload process for the blackmail video. He's laughing like a maniac, imagining Jihu's life going up in flames as the progress bar hits 96%. He's convinced he's won the war, even if he lost the battle, mocking Gammon for being too slow to stop the digital execution. He clearly doesn't know Gammon's all-or-nothing energy. Instead of trying to navigate a Windows menu, Gammon just goes full caveman on the hardware. He lunges for the terminal and rips the power cords and network cables out of the wall at 99%. It's the ultimate clench moment. The connection dies, the upload fails, and suddenly the student council office is just a room full of broken electronics and broken dreams. Then, the true final boss of Yusong Tech arrives, Tam Ken. The warden storms in, smelling cigarette smoke and seeing the carnage, and he immediately pins it all on Gammon. Now we've got a high-speed chase through the hallways. Gammon is sprinting with an entire computer tower in his arms, like it's a newborn baby, while Kilchin and the warden are hot on his heels.